stuff you put on topically. So again, consult your physician, but this is a major game changer. That's why I've stockpiled it. And I realize as we're running out of it, we were having trouble getting another super clean source, and that's how we ended up finding this 2 years ago. And so, Dr. Group, I know you want to get into Fukushima separately, and the news article right here, leaked Fukushima containers could lead to hydrogen explosions, RT. There's 333 of the containers. Each one could be as big as one of the other meltdowns. But I don't really take this just because of background radiation increasing or isotopes or whatever. I take it because I understand my glands will get filled with bad halogens, become toxic and fail, like the thyroid, if they don't fill it with good halogen. And when I forget, and that's iodine, to take my iodine every day, I feel it. I mean, it gives me a bigger boost than a cup of coffee. And I always remember hearing this from the hippies. Like I said, 20-something years ago, I'd go to Barton Springs and see hippies, and I'd say, what's that in that jug or that bottle? And they'd say, it's iodine. They'd be just, super good shape, some like 70-year-old guy looking like he was 40. And I'd be like, and then they'd go, yeah, hippie, whatever. But I remember, this is something the hippies have always known. What is it about iodine? What does it do? And I sure hope we can continue to get these deep earth crystal sources, Dr. Group.
Well, yeah, I mean, anytime you drill from deep down in the earth, you might have a time where, just like oil drilling, where it might dry up a little bit and you need to find some more. But another thing that I think is going on, and this is proven by what just happened a few days ago at Fukushima, when they're saying that Fukushima is leaking again now, and it's the worst ever, the readings in the port in Fukushima. I think that countries are now secretly trying to stock up on a lot of iodine. It's, iodine contamination, iodine 131 is being found now in the rain and milk supplies and the food supplies. But like you said, it's not only the radioactive iodine. And another thing actually that happens is, as that iodine is leaking into the Atlantic Ocean, it also mixes with salt water. And when you mix iodine with salt, it creates iodides. And it can even produce nanoparticles of weird substances that can even be gassed off and go up into the atmosphere for a while. But my research with iodine is that everybody pretty much needs it. We're all deficient in iodine because there's really not any sources of iodine left. And guess what? We've been talking about estrogen dominance and endocrine disrupting chemicals. Well, estrogen actually inhibits the absorption of iodine. So you might actually link that and say, is there a conspiracy behind the endocrine disrupting chemicals, knowing that you're not going to be able to get iodine, the absorption of iodine, if you have those chemicals in, which would mean soy or anything else. Now, the government sets an RDA of 150 micrograms a day, but they set that because that was the amount that would prevent a goiter. But they know that everybody needs much more iodine in their system, even up to, what I take, sometimes even up to 20 milligrams a day, which is 20,000 micrograms. I agree with you. Everybody needs to consult with their healthcare practitioner. But if you look around, we're seeing a massive increase in breast cancer, fibrocystic breast disease. We're talking about any type of glandular, prostate gland. All these things are affected by iodine, being iodine deficient. The thyroid needs about 6,000 micrograms, 3,000 to 6,000 micrograms every single day just for normal functioning. So if you're not sweating, you might be deficient in iodine. If you have cold hands and feet, if your skin is dry, you have insomnia, hair loss, mental illness, again linked to iodine deficiency, depression, anxiety, low immune system, weight gain. Pregnancy and miscarriages are being linked to iodine deficiency. Fibromyalgia is a deficiency. Iodine is a powerful antimicrobial. Studies have been done on iodine, which was suspended in a solution, and it inactivated viruses at dilutions of like 1 in 1 million. So iodine is just something that I feel every person, they've done studies on pregnant mothers and found out that they're deficient in iodine. something that I use, my kids take, and something that I feel is necessary, because it's not just us saying that everybody's iodine deficient. The World Health Organization's Department of Nutrition and Health and Development came out and said that iodine deficiency is a public health problem in 54 countries. Elemental iodine is what the iodine is in its natural state, and that's what it is deep in the earth. And that consists of two iodine atoms that are bonded together, and that is a highly corrosive and toxic compound because it's part of the halogens, which is fluoride and bromine and chlorine and iodine.
And I don't want to confuse people. Explain to them, we're saying iodine's a good halogen. The problem is when it binds with radiation, then it's a bad one. That's why you need the good one, so that there's no room for the bad one to come in.
Well, the iodine in its raw state can be very corrosive, and that's, even though we're taking the best raw state, it still has to go through a 7-step process to be detoxified.
Explain that to people, because I was listening to the hippies finally, before I even knew you, and I started taking iodine here and there, but it would give me a stomach ache, you name it. The stuff they sell at the store will basically kill you. They admit that. So how is this so different, and how is it palatable?
Okay, so when iodine comes out of the ground, it's iodine. There's two iodine molecules in its natural state. So it's just two iodine atoms bonded together. So what they did a long time ago was they found that they could stabilize it, and you show the pictures of when it's smoking, because iodine will evaporate or it'll outgas into the air when it comes in contact with oxygen. So what they figured a way to do was to make an iodide, and that's what you see all the military and the country stocking up on, is potassium iodide. And what that is the ion state of iodine. And that's produced by bonding the iodine to another element. In this case, it would be potassium. This form of iodine, it can be ingested and it can be applied to the skin, but it's hard to break down in the body. So what we did is developed a proprietary technology to where we take the iodine crystals out of the ground, and those have to go through a process to become 99.99% pure. Once we get the 99.99% pure iodine crystals, we create a nascent or an atomic-based iodine that contains a single iodine atom. So instead of something being bonded and there's two, and that has to be broken in the body, the nascent, the survival shield X2, has a iodine atom, which is an active atom, and it's easy for your body to absorb.
And that's why the stuff that you developed using the Russian technology in your own research turns electric blue, the true color of real iodine, not red like all the others, is because I guess they're bound. Yours is in the single form.
Right. Ours is reactive right away. It's an atomic form. It's a single bonded iodine. It's exactly what the body needs to utilize.
So we shouldn't call this nascent iodine. We should call it atomic iodine.
Well, it's pretty much the same thing. So you could, some people say nascent, some people say atomic. It just means as an active electron on its outer shell.
Okay, why, when I first started taking iodine, did it make all this stuff come out of my pores?
Well, iodine will fight for the receptor sites in the thyroid gland and everywhere else in the body, and the fat cells, especially where toxins are kept. And iodine's been proven to immobilize chemicals and toxins and heavy metals from the tissues, and then they go back into your system so you can eliminate them properly.
So that's why, on average, 2 to 3 weeks after taking it, you'll feel like crap, and then stuff will start coming out of you. You're detoxing.
It just depends on each individual, but depends on how much fluoride they have in their body, the chlorine, bromine, other chemicals, heavy metals, lead, actually, mercury. It'll start pushing that stuff out and then getting into the tissue where you need it the most.
Because, I got energy right away, and I had energy while I felt bad. It just kind of felt like a hangover for a week. And then after that, it was like when you've been carrying, say, your 7-year-old on your shoulders up a hill and you take them off and it feels like you're flying, walking feels so easy. That's what it felt like. I was 18 again after I went through that detox. It was just amazing.
Well, because it's balancing your hormones out too, because it displaces some of those endocrine disrupting chemicals. And iodine is just an amazing substance. Once your thyroid gland starts to reactivate again and your pineal gland starts to decalcify, and your hormones start functioning, Usually when you have hormone disruption, that's when all your symptoms start to happen. Your low energy, your fatigue, your mental conditions, your weight gain around your stomach and your buttocks area, your insomnia, your skin issues. You know, if you have any dry skin, psoriasis, eczema, cysts in your body, depression, anxiety, miscarriages in women. I mean, all those things are going to be, there's a whole slew of symptoms that we can link to.
And if folks don't want to get Survival Shield X2, Original Survival Shield, they can go do research and find good salts that do have good iodine in them, correct?
Well, you can get a Himalayan crystal salt, and that's going to have some good iodine in it. But again, it's probably going to be bonded to a sodium or a potassium. There's no form of iodine like the X2 out there, and it's easy to take. You're probably, even in the salts, not going to get enough.
But still, it's better than nothing. It's better than nothing.
It's better than nothing. It's better than nothing. But you got to remember, think of all the chemicals that you're bringing into your body. How many people out there have mercury amalgam fillings? They're constantly getting mercury gas leaking into their brain and their bloodstream. All the chemicals.
Sure, let me ask you this as we go to break and then come back and take calls. Because we got Dave, as a vet, has a question about his meds. Robert wants to talk about mercury and dental fillings you just mentioned. I'm going to push our next guest back. I want to interview him, but till about 15 after. I'll do the whole rest of the hour with our next guest on media. Very important interview coming up. But we're 1 minute from break here. I just wanted to get into the fact that you don't want to openly say this on air, but you were talking to some researchers and folks. We're trying to test this. But the way you use organic palm glycerin, just as a different medium than alcohol, what's happening with the iodine going into that? You think that might be making it even more bioavailable, or what's happening?
Well, with our research, we were looking for a natural, non-toxic source to be able to stabilize the iodine in that state. All the research before has been done with alcohol, but we now know that alcohol in itself is an endocrine-disrupting chemical. So if alcohol is an endocrine-disrupting chemical, and iodine is supposed to take the endocrine-disrupting chemicals out of the body, then it's kind of, one of those, buffering situations. So
stay there. We'll be back in 70 seconds. It's important. Third hour, folks. Ton of news as well. Future of the internet, future of free speech. What about the attack on free speech, the TPP, you name it? We're going to go to 15 after with Dr. Group to take your calls. I appreciate you holding. Dave in Missouri, you have a question. Go ahead. Welcome, Dave from Missouri. Go ahead. You're on the air. Okay, that caller's gone. Let's talk to Robert in Nevada. You're on the air. Go ahead, Robert.
Hey, Alex. I'm 14 years old. I've been watching for a while. When I was 7 years old, I got fillings and with mercury in them. And after that, I was diagnosed with OCD. So I was just curious as if that's linked to any kind of mental disorders.
Well, I know dentists have a record, rate of dying early of all physicians, some of the worst. And a lot of evidence shows it's because they're breathing the amalgams as they drill them out. But that's one theory. I mean, we know mercury and lead is super bad, especially mercury. Dr. Group?
No, you're absolutely right. Like what you were talking about with the Mad Hatter, and mercury has, especially when it combines with aluminum in the brain, it can create violent reactions. So I would definitely say that would be something I would look at, and mercury is extremely damaging. So my recommendation would be to find a biological dentist somewhere in your area that can safely remove the mercury amalgam fillings and replace them with maybe a non-toxic porcelain or something like that. Just make sure that he uses the proper dental dams, and some of them use ozone. You might want to look for one that does that to neutralize any of the gases the mercury releases as they remove them. Some people have gone down to Mexico that we've talked to get their mercury amalgams removed and ended up paralyzed from the waist down, because when they're removing the mercury amalgams, if you swallow a big chunk or too much of the gas is released, it can cause such damaging neurological damage that can even paralyze you.
Unbelievable. Reality is just so much stranger than fiction. Mercury in fillings. I mean, it's like mercury in the vaccines. It's insanity. Anything else, Robert?
That's all, but thank you very much for taking my call.
Thank you, sir, for calling. Christina in Louisiana, you're on the air. Go ahead.
Yes,
or Christian,
sir.
I'm sorry.
Christian.
Sir, go ahead.
Oh no, it's all right, no problem. Well, two questions. You mentioned mercury and vaccines. That's not exactly what I called about, but I found myself yesterday having a more intense discussion with a good friend of mine than I expected to have.